Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of the B1G Watchdog News Podcast, Season 2, Episode 8. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Graham Dinas.
And I'm Taylor Seamer.
Before we get into this episode, which should be pretty exciting, just want to mention, check the link in the description below, wherever you're listening to us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you give us a like and a subscribe. And be sure to check us out on any of those platforms that interest you. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter. We just hit 100 followers on Twitter, which is massive. We talked about that last week that we were approaching, and we did it in less than a week, so good for us. Make sure you give us a follow on Twitter, and then also make sure you check out our new blog website, Big Ten Watchdog News Podcast blog. Link for that is also down in the description. You want to just get on into it?
Let's go right to it.
Okay. The same schedule as last week. We're just going to go through the rankings, go on team by team, and then do the predictions for the games this weekend. And the top of my tournament rankings look about the same as they have all season, starting with Purdue topping the list at number 1. Still first in all the same metrics, all the resume metrics. Second in all the, predictive metrics like net and KenPom. This past week, Purdue, this weekend, they pull up the schedule. They beat Rutgers. That's right. Rutgers kind of gave them a scare in the rack, which is a place that they've had trouble playing in. But they won that one by 8. And then, obviously, the overtime game against Northwestern in Mackey Arena that Purdue won by 9, but it wasn't nearly that close. What'd you like, what you didn't like about Purdue as they sit still at number 1 overall in my rankings?
I didn't like the number of free throws they got against Northwestern, but you can't complain about getting a win, so you kind of take that with what you get. That being said, because of Wisconsin's falter, they've bumped up into first place by a half game in the conference. So, and I don't see them really giving that up anytime soon, considering they've got to go play Wisconsin as they're playing maybe some of their best basketball at the moment. And Wisconsin has looked like they faltered a little bit.
Back to the foul discrepancy. 46 to 8 on free throw attempts for each team. And I know there are some people that have pointed out how problematic that is. But even more so than that, it's kind of just the way each team is stylistically. Like Purdue doesn't foul, and Northwestern was failing to attack the rim at any sort of consistent rate. And so the fact that Purdue only had 8 fouls or allowed 8 free throws doesn't really shock me. And also, Northwestern's game plan was to hack Zach Edey like aggressively. But I mean 46 seems like it's a high number. And Zach Edey took what, 22, 24 of those? But like going into that, Northwestern's best defense on Zach Edey was we have 3 centers and they all get 5 fouls. We just have to make sure they don't use all 15. And I think they ended up using 12 or 13 of them. So like I understand where the discrepancy comes from. That being said, 46 to 8 it's just shocking. Um, and yeah, I mean, I we've had for a year and a half now. Do we need to have a dialogue on how they call fouls on Zach Edey? Um, I don't know. I still don't know what the answer to that question is personally.
Yeah, so Ant Wright went on he was feeling kind of ticked off that people were disrespecting the refs, and so he went on live on Twitter and did a foul audit. He went through the entire
I
game,
saw this.
and he claims that Purdue committed 26 fouls and Edie committed 4 of them. And that does not match very closely to the official box score, where Purdue only was called for 15 fouls and Edie was only called for 2. That being said, he had Northwestern committing 44 fouls and Zach Edey being fouled 25 of those times, where Northwestern was only called for 31 of their 44. So the percentage wise, I mean, it's Purdue was called for more of their total fouls than Northwestern was.
Well, by percentage, no, but they were closer to the actual number. It's, I mean, whenever you're going to foul at that high of a volume, that's going to happen, right? 46 to 8, it's shocking. It generally is. And Northwestern, if it was 46 to, I don't even, like, from 18, then you could, that's like where I draw the line and be like, that's reasonable. But yeah, Purdue doesn't foul. I don't have a huge problem with it just because of, like I said, that was the game plan for both teams heading into the game. But the fact that, I mean, Northwestern, Boo Buie had a shot at the win, right? In regulation, despite being down 40 in free throw attempts during the game, right? I mean, they played very well, and they may just be the Purdue kryptonite.
I mean, yeah, it worked. They had the shot to win the game. So I mean, if you're Northwestern, you can't really complain.
No,
And I think that's why even at the end of the game when Chris Collins got
I was gonna get
ejected,
there. Uh-huh.
he still went and shook both Painter's hand and Edie's hand.
I think he's just a stand-up guy. Chris Collins, 1992 Illinois Mr. Basketball winner from Glenbrook North. Um, no, we need to talk about the ejection because that was a foul on Lance Jones. He like picked up the leg. I don't remember if it was Barnheiser or Langborg who had the ball, but he like straight up picked up their leg. That doesn't go called, and then I don't remember what the action was. I think a steal or a turn. I don't remember, but Chris Collins gets very heated, gets tossed immediately. I don't think he had a tech prior to that. They just tossed him with 9 seconds left.
Yeah, no, they hit him with the double tag and said,
Yeah. So, and then he, angrily shouts. He's got Barnheiser holding him back. He's going, "I'm good. I'm good. I'm good." And that was hilarious. You could like it was so clear what he was saying. Um, and then he goes, yeah, does the handshake line before the game ends, and then starts hyping up the Purdue crowd, waving his arms, telling them to get loud with 9 seconds left as they're down, whatever, 4 or 5 points. Hilarious ejection. Might be the best I've seen. Definitely the best I've seen this season. Might be the best I've seen since we started doing this.
yeah, I don't even know that he had to have said a magic word to get that quick of a whistle. But I mean, generally he's like one of the mo more respected coaches in the league. So I'm a Chris Collins fan, and I have no problem with him getting ejected in that situation.
No, especially yeah. At that point, the game was over as well. And if you he wasn't super like angry about that foul discrepancy because I mean he's saying what I'm saying with that was just our game plan. But there were toward down the stretch, especially it seemed to the scale seemed to tip a little more towards Purdue, and then at the end, whenever they'd already taken 42 foul shots, and you give them four more off double tags, that's kind of the icing on the cake. So if it evens out, Purdue only had 42 attempts, meaningful free throw attempts before the game was over. Um, so yeah, but Purdue still a number one seed, still the number one overall seed in my metric. Let's move on to Wisconsin. They remain at number two, coming off a 15-point win against Michigan State at home on Friday night. They sweep that season series, and then like a 16-point collapse, halftime collapse. They led, I believe, 43-27 at half against Nebraska in Lincoln. Um, and then Nebraska works it all the way back, ties it, goes into overtime, and Nebraska wins by 8, 80-72. Huge home win for Nebraska, and they are Wisconsin's kryptonite. If you remember back 2 years ago, last day of the season, Wisconsin wins outright at the Big Ten if they can beat Nebraska. they lose. Then last year, this exact same thing happened that happened this year. Wisconsin was up 17 at halftime on Nebraska and blew it in Pinnacle Bank Arena. This year they go there and blow it again. Um, so yeah, it's interesting yin and yang with Nebraska and Wisconsin, but they still, in all my metrics, look about the same. Probably still sixth or seventh in the country despite the loss.
Yeah, they look their record looks so weird because they have wins against like Michigan State and Northwestern, but then they have losses to Penn State and Nebraska. It's just like, are they like, why are you playing down to your competition and then when it gets close, you end up losing? I just don't understand. Like, good teams don't do that. So is this just a fluke team?
I don't know. It this year, like we said, more than ever, impossible to win on the road. Um, and you go into with Nebraska and you shut them up immediately by just stomping them in the first half. I think they were up like 23-8 as well as a score I remember seeing. Like they put the foot on the gas immediately and then carried that into halftime. And then within like the first 8 minutes of the second half, it was back to a two possession game. So I don't know if that's we're sitting back getting lazy. I know Fred Hoiberg in the post game, uh, just like the on court interview, was talking about how he kind of lit a fire in his guys in the locker room. And so, is it a combination of collapse and sudden ascension in the second half, or more so one of the other? I don't know, but this Wisconsin team, AJ Storr still had 28 points. He had their first 10. Like, I don't know. There's a lot going on with Wisconsin, and I don't like. I was very firm in that they were going to be a two seed, but that I'm wavering a little bit right now. I still think they're going to be there if I had to guess, but they're making me a little bit scared. Is all I'll say.
Yeah, they haven't been playing well. And then now they're playing the best team, arguably in the country, on Sunday. Um,
At home,
they
must
do get
win.
them at home, but
Must win, I think. If you lose this one, you're not winning the conference.
correct. Your conference chances are out the window. And it's, I don't see them winning. So what 2 weeks ago looked like Wisconsin was sa smooth sailing now looks like they could finish in third place.
We'll see, because yeah, they had they had the narrow win against Minnesota last week. But then they followed up with a home win. At home, what they beat Northwestern by 8. They beat Indiana by 12. Like I said, Michigan State by 15. Nebraska by 16. Right? They've played good teams at home in conference. They beat Iowa by 11. That's their home schedule. Like they've won the closest game has been 8. And I guess we just saw that Purdue is not necessarily 8 points better than Northwestern. So I think it's going to be a good game. That game will be at noon Central on CBS on Sunday, and we'll talk more about that later. Okay, staying put at number 3 is Illinois. They did move up in the rankings, coming off a two-win week. Correct? Yeah, they beat Indiana by 8 on Saturday at home in a game that was much closer than it needed to be, and then they took care of business in Columbus on Thursday. Was that Thursday? No, on Tuesday. Um, with a dominant second half performance by one Terrence Shannon, who people are saying is back. Um, all the metrics, they move up 17th in strength of record, still 12th in the net, 15th in or 10th in KenPom, 15th in KPI, and that current seed projection would have them as a 4, I believe, an unofficial 4 seed.
Yeah, I this team is just they're so up and down, and I don't know why. because like they have all this hype, they have these guys who can always score, but there's one night that like the entire team just shoots awfully, and it like against Maryland or Northwestern, so it's like I don't know, they're gonna drop two more games somewhere down the stretch of the season, but they really shouldn't. Like this team should be fighting for first place, and they're gonna be fighting Wisconsin for second, just because they drop games they shouldn't. But then they blow out teams that are like, oh, this game should be close, like Ohio State.
This next stretch
What is
will
their
be important.
cultural like? Why does that? Is there a reason for that, or are they just kind of?
I think it's well, so the Big Ten, like, I mean, again, winning on the road is impossible in the Big Ten, but it'll, like, obviously, Brad more so than a lot of coaches in the Big Ten outside of, Frank McCaffrey, maybe Chris Collins. Um, we have an analytically sound kind of background in what we do. Shoot a lot of threes, do not give up a lot of threes is kind of the mantra of what Illinois has done. And they've improved at getting to the rim this year compared to last year, especially. Um, but yeah, I mean, when you're going to shoot a large amount of threes, that's going to happen. You're going to have off nights from the floor. This team is better equipped to, score whenever the ball is not going in from behind the arc. And also, they have more guys that are shooting, that are capable of shooting a high clip from three. So, on any given night, it's kind of unlikely that all five or six guys are going to be off. Um, the difference is the reason why is defensively, certain teams, whenever we played Maryland and Indiana, right, those are two of the worst shooting teams in the entire country. And whenever your defensive mantra is we need to run teams off the 3-point line and force them to take tough twos, is that like how do you balance, this team is way better from two than three with we don't want this team shooting three. We don't want to get beat by the three, right? And Indiana didn't make a single three all game whenever they played us, and they still kept an 8-point game because Malik Reneau is able to succeed whenever he got the ball in the low post. Um, so it's gonna be it's and like Northwestern dominated us because Boo Buie, was knocking down floaters from 15 feet all game long inside the arc. If we get beat inside the arc because that's the shots that we're giving up. And analytically, that's a sound idea, but some teams are not good at shooting, like in Indiana, like in Maryland, and maybe it's more effective to let them shoot themselves out of a game rather than allow it to stay close. Or in the case of the Maryland game, you get upset. Um, so that's the main difference, and I think like another team is going to be Michigan State. That was a 3-point game in State Farm Center. Next weekend, that's where Illinois is going. That game scares me because that team is not a tremendous shooting team. You just have to balance it, and whenever you give up a lot of easy twos, like this team has been doing at times recently, you're going to drop games that you should. That's, I think, the answer to your question. All right, let's move on to Northwestern. They move up a spot in our rankings from last week. They were at 5. This week they are at 4. Last week, let's see, they moved up approximately half a seed line, which would put them roughly at, let's see, 7, 9, 6. So yeah, they'd stay an 8 seed probably in this most recent projection. 26 strength of record, 33 in Ken Palm, or 43 in Ken Palm, 58 in the net. This past week we mentioned the Purdue game. We don't need to talk about that anymore. But they also get a 25-point dominant win over Ohio State on the weekend. What do you got on Northwestern that we haven't
Yeah,
already
I
talked
think
about?
I think they're playing um, probably some of their best basketball, their most inspired basketball um, right now in this stretch. If you extend it back a little bit, you've got the Illinois win, and the Ohio State blowout, and a shot to beat Purdue in regulation. Um, I like this team and where they're going, and their upcoming schedule isn't super difficult. Um, this could be something they can prolong into some good success.
they're fighting for the double bye, right? And right now they have pole position, right? You assume that those top three teams are going to get it, and the fourth spot is kind of up for grabs between them, Nebraska, and Michigan State. Um, I guess Maryland. Maryland's kind of hot right now, but I'd say those three are the main contenders for that. And yeah, I don't see a reason why, as of right now, it's not Northwestern. They have the leg up currently. They've looked the best this season, I think, out of those teams. Um, and yeah, like you mentioned, they go to Minnesota, then they get a home game against Nebraska, which is huge, and then they host Penn State, go to Rutgers. Yeah, like they don't play outside of the Nebraska game. They don't play another tournament team until March 6th when they go to Michigan State. That's a stretch that if you want that double bye and you want to lock yourself into the tournament field, you just need to dominate that stretch. Drop, one, maybe two games.
See, and I think this is going to cause problems next year when you only play some teams. When you only play pretty much every team once, is you're going to get stretches like this that are going to lead some teams to get a bye and some teams to not get a bye, just because of you only get to play them. You only get to play teams once, and you could get favorable stretch down the end when another team gets a hard stretch. You could get the right teams at home versus away, and it's good for Northwestern this year. I mean, they have an easy stretch to close it out, whereas some of those other teams that are fighting have much harder schedules. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this dynamic becomes a greater problem in years to come.
I feel like the schedule difficulty is going to balance out. I think that that'll work itself out most seasons. What you said about the home versus away, that's what scares me. That's where the imbalance is created, especially in the Big Ten, where home court advantage is such a real thing. Um, the teams that you get at home versus the teams you have to travel to could make all the difference. Um, but yeah, Northwestern's current Big Ten schedule, the first half, they they've had to play Purdue twice, Illinois twice, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Nebraska once. Like it's been a tough stretch, and they get out of it at 6-4. So that's props to Northwestern for doing that. Now they get to, I don't want to say coast, but if they can just handle business, they're going to make themselves a lock for the tournament by ending the season with how many? What's their current? They're currently 15-6, right? If they're a 10-loss team heading into March, they're in for sure. So as long as they don't drop more than three of these games in the rest of the regular season, where they only play two more tournament teams, they're a lock. Um, that's exciting for Nebraska or for Northwestern fans to hear too, because what, third tournament ever? I,
And
I am excited for
they've all
them.
come by Chris Collins, right? So
Yeah, it was 2017, I believe, and then last year and this year. And this year's team, right? We didn't think they'd be as good as last year's group, and they're right there doing the same thing that that team did. So very impressive start to Big Ten play for Northwestern. They just don't fumble, right? You're essentially on the goal line. Don't be Zay Flowers and fumble. Um, Number 5, down from number 4 last week, is Nebraska, despite the win over Wisconsin. Their metric kind of evened out, I would say, is what happened this week, because you do have the 22-point road loss to Maryland, as well as the 8-point home overtime win to Wisconsin. Um, the Wisconsin game was interesting because it was not a Tominaga game. It was an everyone else game. If I can pull up the box score, it was just such a very fun watch. Let's see. Yeah, Rank Moss with 20, CJ Wilcher especially off the bench with 22. It doesn't matter if Tominaga goes 1 of 7 from the field and 0 for 4 from 3. If you have a Wilcher off the bench that's going to go 5 for 7 from 3 and 7 of 10 from the field and drop a 22 ball, Bryce Williams also goes for 17. Um, it can be anyone on any given night with this Nebraska team. They are so much fun. and they'll have duds like they did against Maryland, and they need to limit those in order to keep their tournament chances rolling. But when they can beat Wisconsin, they beat Purdue. They're coming to Champaign tomorrow, and I don't want to say I'm scared, but I'm on edge.
Yeah, I
They're
think
tough.
this Nebraska team is interesting because when they're on, they're like one of the top three teams in the conference, and when they're not, they're like a bottom three team. So it's like when they're playing well, or like they have one guy who's going off who keeps them in exciting games, they're really fun to watch. And then they have duds where they lose by 20 to Maryland. Um, that it's like, oh, this is just the old Nebraska team that I remember watching for the past decade that is just not exciting whatsoever. And, they just like roll over and get beat by 20 every night. Um, so it's like, I don't know. I don't know if this is still just because they're in transition from basement team to top tier team, or if this is like an indication that some of this is a fluke and that next year they'll return. And I haven't decided which of those two it is yet.
I think Fred Hoiberg has just definitely changed the culture, is what you have to say, right? Because the past 10 years of Nebraska ball, this season was not even like an option. It wasn't on the range of possibilities. Um, and even if they collapse down the stretch, right, that would obviously be painful. But it's still the best season they've had since I think 2014 is when they made the tournament. If I may be remembering that incorrectly. So a decade. But they're just so exciting. 57th in the net, 32nd in strength of record, 21st in Ken Palm. Probably looking at an 8 or a 9 seed. Um, yeah, a very, very high 9 is what my prediction has. So I would not want to play an 8 seed or a 1 seed. They could beat a 1 seed. They have beat 1 seeds. That's a scary matchup in March. Michigan State stays put at number 6. This past week, like we said, 15-point road loss against Wisconsin, followed by a 19-point home win over Michigan. Um, I saw that the Maze Rage went to Breslin, and
Yes, that's
I think it was Wolverine Corner that just said why, and then
um
and then they responded with a Jim Halpert shrugging emoji. I thought that was funny. Like I don't know.
yeah, this is the annual trip they make every year.
Uh huh.
Um that's the only place that we go to. We're not like those other schools who try to impersonate boys and girls clubs to defraud the
I
system.
have no idea what you're talking about.
We
First of
just
all,
we just only go to Michigan State because um, we're a respectable student section. Um, but yeah, I agree. We should not have gone this year because it was just yeah. If we could only play basketball for 20 minutes, Michigan would be the best team in the league. And so it was an exciting first 20, and then we should have left immediately. I'm not sure if they did because I didn't go. I was busy, but um, yeah. The exchanges between the Maze Rage on Twitter and whoever just decides to poke fun at them that day are often hilarious, and I recommend that you follow them.
um, about Michigan State, I don't know. Typical Michigan State week. I don't know if there's really much to add. I believe they're, let's see, last week I had them at 11.01. This week my metric has them at 10.41, so they move up point 0.6 seeds. Um, Move up in the net, 22. They're in the high 40s in the resume stuff. 10.41 would get them, it'd be an 11. They would not have to play in the first four. And that's probably about right. Again, like we said, for Michigan State. I know Lenardi has Michigan State much higher than everyone else. That's kind of just like I'm going to say an expectation. We know that Tom Izzo coaches this team, and there's a sort of, pride that comes with the program. I think they'll play their way out of that spot, that 11 seed. They'll probably end up being a 7, 8, 9, just like they were last year. And again, that's just a team in March that I don't want to play. Okay.
Yeah, it's you get caught in you get caught in like this guy just has so much experience, he just knows how to outcoach you, even if his team is not as good as you. And that sucks in March because it's like we're clearly the better team and we just got donkeyed because the guy has literally coached in 40 NCAA tournaments or something crazy. So
The thing with Michigan State too is they're like talent wise, and even like the metrics say they might end up being better than whoever they play. Right? They're a top 20 team in Ken Palm. Right? It's just what they've put on the resume doesn't line up with that, and so they're gonna get underseeded, and they're gonna be a team that has a chance to pull that upset if they were to get a 9 or a 10 seed. Um, they're much better than a typical 8-9 seed. And right now I have them as an 11. So scary. Michigan State's going to be a scary matchup unless if they can work their way. I mean, they'll be an especially scary matchup if they start winning consistently and are able to get like a 6 seed by the end of this or better. That would be the most frightening, I think, is if you let this team get hot. Indiana's going to stay put at 7. They obviously 8-point loss without Khalil Ware at Illinois on Saturday, followed by what was the other game? A 6-point home win against Iowa on Tuesday. Um, Kind of more of the same for Indiana as well. They're just staying just off the bubble.
yeah, they seem to beat the teams that they should and don't beat the teams that are clearly better than them. Occasionally they can keep it close like they did against Illinois, but then if you go look at the Wisconsin game, that was much more off the rails for them. And especially the Purdue game if you go back about 2 weeks now. Um, so yeah, they're just like an average team that can't seem to do the one or two things they would need to to be in the conversation.
Yeah, I think what Mike Woodson does is somehow they're going to find themselves in the conversation by the end of March. I don't think they'll get in. I don't know if they're good enough, but I know they're running more McKenzie and Baco lineups at the 4 because that's a better matchup for current day modern basketball. Um, which stinks because you're taking one of your two best players off the court because your two best players are both centers. Um, but the matchup, it's more of a favorable matchup whenever only one of them is on the court. But Malik Reneau, I know he got hurt in that Iowa game, so hopefully he returns today against Indiana. I'm not sure if we have a report on that. That game starts in like less than an hour, well, a little more than an hour, so we should have that whenever we do the preview. I don't know. I think they're going to be in the conversation. I don't know if they're good. I don't think they'll make it, but I think that they will weasel their way into the conversation of the bubble. Okay, Iowa's listed at 8. They move up a spot this week. Wasn't really much of their own doing, more of someone else's undoing that we'll get to. A 3-game week for Iowa. They even the series with a 10-point road win against Michigan, just as Michigan did them in December. And then, like we said, the 6-point loss to Indiana, and then they beat Ohio State by 2 last night in Carver Hawkeye. So, I mean, they get a road win against a not great Michigan team, and they just kind of are staying put right here. I don't think that they're primed to make the leap into the conversation like I want them to.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see that they had moved up a spot, just because of, their game against Indiana and then only a 2-point win against Ohio State and then a bad Michigan win. Um, so it's like, yeah, they move up, but they don't change any minds.
Yeah, no, they move up because because Ohio State moved down, right? It really had nothing to do with what they've done. It was more of a by necessity. This team needs to move up. They now sit at 5-6 in conference, which only puts them, I guess, a game and a half back of the double bye. I don't think they're a team that's going to be playing on Wednesday. I don't know. It's a tough call with Iowa. I think that they're going to settle right into that 8-9 game, and that's what this team has been. And can they get hot and beat you? Yes. Will they? Probably not. Okay, moving up 2 spots from number 11 last week is Maryland. They also jump Ohio State. They did not play a game this week. They just have the 22-point win against Nebraska. Maryland might be back. And like I said, they may have dug themselves too deep a hole to fully recover, but they're competing for a double bye despite having no chance at the tournament right now.
Well, they've got to go to Michigan State today, and they've got Illinois and Wisconsin still on the schedule, plus an at Ohio State and an at Rutgers. So they very well could play themselves off the double bye. But for now, they're playing better than I thought they could, despite because they literally have no offense, and yet they're scoring 70 points.
Let's say they have an offense. His name is Jameer Young. It's just Jameer. He is, like I said, playing at an All-American level on a not close to All-American level team. He's doing just as much, if not maybe more, than what Boo Buie is doing, and he's not going to get as much credit because this team, like I said, had neutral site losses to UAB and Davidson, who are not good. It's I just think they dug themselves too deep a hole. Like they're in the high 70s or low 80s for all of the important metrics, except Ken Palm. Ken Palm has them at 53, which would be bubble territory. Um, yeah, we'll see. We'll have more to talk about with Maryland, depending on if they're able to not take care of business, pull the upset against Michigan State and even that season series, which we'll get into that game. Let's talk about Ohio State. They fall to number 10. No, they were as high as, I'm going to say 4 on this list at one time. They've fallen to 10, and it's just a spitting image of what happened last year to this Ohio State team. And Chris Holtmann, I think, needs to be put out of his misery.
Yeah, they've lost 4 in a row. If they don't win that Penn State game about 2 weeks ago, they would be on an 8-game skid because they lost the 3 previous to that. Um, In-conference games for Chris Holtmann are just not his friend. I mean, they came into conference with only 2 losses, and now they've lost 7 of 8, with only 2 conference wins in that time, being Rutgers and Penn State, both of them at home.
Arguably, I mean, 2 of the 3 worst teams in the conference. People are forgetting, I don't know if people are forgetting or not, this team beat Alabama on a neutral site in November during Feast Week. This team, like, Alabama's a 3 seed. They're the current leaders of the SEC, who is a better conference than the Big Ten right now. Um, they've just fallen off a cliff, man. I don't know what it is. It's sad, really, because this
When
team is talented.
when this team finishes under 500, is it time for Chris Holtmann to go to Indeed.com?
Yeah, I think so. I think he is a guy that I am comfortable saying this job he may not be cut out for this particular job. I think he was great at Butler before. He was somewhere else before Butler where he did very well. And I think if he was able to have, I think I don't know, a lower level program I trust Chris Holtmann with dearly, but Ohio State doesn't seem to be that place anymore, at least. After the 2022 season, it's just been not good. So we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in the offseason. Unless they can turn it around. They're in a place where if they were able to turn it around, they'd be in a better spot than a lot of teams because of that Alabama win. Their metrics are more favorable. Okay, Minnesota, number 11. They are up 1 spot from last week. So we have a 9-point road win against Penn State, and Minnesota's back at what, 4-5 in conference play. They are back.
Yeah, it was good to see them get back on track there, especially a road win, although it is a bad team. But they were on a 4 game skid, so to get back is important for them. However, they now have Northwestern and Michigan State back to back this week.
At
So
home.
that's true. They're both at home, but both of those teams are very capable of winning on the road.
Yeah.
So Minnesota has kind of taken the same road as Nebraska in the fact that when they play well, they're really fun to watch, and when they don't, it's like, oh darn, same old Minnesota team.
Yeah, I'm at least they're exciting too, right? And are they competing for a tournament spot? Probably not. But their their current their record, they're 13-7. They could be in position to be in position. I just don't know if this team's talented enough to do it in this Big Ten schedule. But like you said, 2 home games against tournament teams. At least since they're both at home, you have a better chance to win at least one of them, right? And two tough losses that might kill you whenever it's all said and done, especially with them both being at home. But this weekend and I guess Saturday and Tuesday for Minnesota, right? That's if you're a Minnesota fan, lock in on those games and you got to win at least one to stay alive. Okay, let's do Rutgers at 12. They're also down 2 spots, just as Ohio State was. A tough week for Rutgers, who now sits a half game ahead of the bottom of the Big Ten. Home loss to Purdue, close home loss, right? And you can't fault them for that because they're not as good, and they made it a game after it wasn't. But then they score 46 points at home against Penn State, and that is a problem, and that has killed Rutgers' season. I'd say in between Minnesota and Rutgers, that's where the lines draw and the season is over.
Yeah, and it's hard to score points when your leading scorer only averages 12 a game. Like that's nothing fantastic. Like even mid-level teams in the Big Ten have their leading scorers averaging 18, 19, not 12. So, I mean, you even look at the Purdue game. They only lost by 8, but that's only because they held Purdue to 68. They only scored 46 at home against the arguably third worst team in the conference.
I have them as
Only
second worst. Yeah.
And that's only because I would normally have Penn State below them, but they beat them by 15 at home.
Yeah.
It's not a good look for Rutgers, and it's not something that I think they can fix with the team that they have.
No, help is on the way. They've got the highly ranked recruiting class coming in next year. But yeah, whenever you lose McConnell, Spencer, Mulcahy, right? Those are your 3 starting guards. Obviously, there's going to be some turnaround. Um, but even offensively, the fact that none of them are averaging 12 a game, like that's just kind of how Rutgers plays. The issue is they're not high end defensively. They're middle high end, but they're not cream of the crop in the nation defensively. And yeah, you're right. There are times where they struggle to score, but they did that last year too, and they still should have got into the tournament, even though they did not. This team is just not as well equipped to win those big games, and you saw it this year. This will be the first year they don't beat Purdue in several, at least 2, if not 3. Okay, Penn State with the win over Rutgers jumps Michigan for 13th, despite the home loss to Minnesota. Um, yeah, I don't know. I was impressed with Penn State's performance against Rutgers at the bare minimum. Right,
I
good for
mean,
them.
I wouldn't say impressed. They scored 60 points in a
Yeah, but
Big Ten basketball game.
they did hold them to 46. How much of that was Penn State versus how much of that was Rutgers is up in the air, but right. I mean, that's a team. They shot. If I can what, Rutgers shot 34% from the field, 1 of 17 on threes. So that'll do it.
Oh, for sure. It's just I don't know how much you can credit to Penn State being good.
I don't think Penn State is good, but this is at least, a glimmer of, we're not the doormat of the league, right? They're 4-6. They're competing to not have to play on Wednesday. So good for them.
I'm not sure they'll make it, but it's a noble goal.
Yeah, I don't think they will either. I think they're going to be 11th or 12th probably if I had to guess. But I wish them luck and hope that they don't end up there. Okay, and then Michigan has the descent has completed. This is the low point of the Juwan Howard era. For
Is
the
it
first
though?
time ever, Michigan sits at number 14 in the Graham Diners tournament power rankings.
Will today be a new low point in the Juwan Howard era?
You know what? It might be.
I think it might be.
Who's today?
Today's
Rutgers at home.
Rutgers.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, that is potential to
This
be
could
bad.
be the new low point of of Michigan basketball under Juwan Howard.
Maybe ever. Maybe ever. Maybe the new low point for Michigan basketball ever.
I don't
But
know, man. There were some dark times there in the early 2000s when we were under sanctions. It was rough.
okay, okay. Well, if what I'm seeing on the court holds true, we'll see.
Hey, we get Doug today,
Doug
so it's
plays
fine.
today. Yeah,
Doug
good,
plays
good, good
today.
for you guys.
He got his homework done. He can play today.
Oh man, yeah,
Uh,
Michigan. Let's see, this is old news now, but I'm assuming that not much has changed. If I can pull up, I want to see where I had them ranked nationally in my metric as of Monday. So, a few days old now, but like I said, for them, nothing much has changed. For everyone else, it would even out. Michigan is, I probably scrolled too far. The overall, where are they? Michigan State, 130 in the country.
and that surprises no one.
Yep.
I would
So,
have thought it was lower than that.
yep. 4 spots behind your Southern Illinois Salukis at
Heck
126,
yeah. Heck yeah.
who just collapsed at home against Missouri State and lost in overtime. So
True,
that's
but
not good.
but but they also forced a collapse last week against Murray, so
They did. So, okay, let's get into the weekend predictions. Let's go through these. Penn State at Indiana starts in less than an hour. Probably by the time this video is uploaded, will have started. Do we have a Malik Renew update?
not that I've seen, so I would imagine his status is the same, but
He's dressed. Dressed for
well,
pregame
there we go.
warmups. So that's huge. Home game against Penn State. Uh, Fox Sports 1 at 11 Central and local time, noon Eastern. Line is set at 5.5. Is that what you have?
Indiana's in the Eastern time, yeah?
Is it? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So noon local time. That's on me. Hand up. That one's on me. Do you have what do you have? Indiana is 5.5 point favorites? Does that sound right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
That seems about right.
What do you like?
If Renew's playing, I think Indiana covers that pretty easily,
Yeah, I
you
do
know?
too. I agree. Like you said earlier, Indiana is every single team that I listed after Indiana, they will beat, and every team I listed before Indiana, they will lose to. They're not. There's no surprises with this Indiana team.
They are the quintessential average team.
They are so mid. And I think they'll take care of business against Penn State today. And their midness would have them a half game back of the double bye, barring a Northwestern loss in which they would be tied for it, which is a little shocking. Um, Penn State guards well on the perimeter, but who is Ace Baldwin going to guard for Indiana? Right, they don't have any guards. Right, Galloway and Cups and Xavier Johnson. I guess if X is good, that's probably the matchup, but who knows with Xavier Johnson at this point?
You know where the best Xavier Johnson in college basketball plays?
Still a dog. Okay. Northwestern at Minnesota. Northwestern 1.5 point favorites on the road, looking to improve to 7-4 in conference play at 1 Central on Big Ten Network, 2 Eastern.
I kind of like that. I think Northwestern pulls this game out close. It's under 5 points.
You think you think that because Northwestern's playing their best ball, but this is when they lose, right? This is how the Big Ten works, right? This is the game that they dropped to Minnesota. I'll take Northwestern too, just because I think they are enough better than Minnesota to take care of business, but I would not be shocked if that's a game they drop as well. I'm trying to think of the matchups. Who's Minnesota gonna put on Bowie? I don't know. Perimeter defensively, right? They've got Mike Mitchell and Elijah Hawkins,
They might
who
just throw
I
Garcia on him.
no, they're not doing that. They're gonna put Garcia.
He's got some length.
They're gonna put him on probably Brooks,
They
if
can
I had to
keep him.
guess.
They can keep Bowie at length and keep him from driving.
Yeah, but I don't know if he has the quicks. We'll see. I'm curious to see what that matchup is, and we'll see. With Northwestern, it's not just Bowie. They've had teams where just Boo Buie was balling and everyone else was bad, and we saw what those teams did, which was nothing. This team, right? You have role guys like Matt Nicholson, Brooks Barnheiser, Ty Berry, and Lang Borg, and Nick Martinelli. All these guys that are doing their jobs, and that's what kind of separates and elevates this Northwestern team, which is why they're going to make the tournament as of today. All right, the Big Ten Toilet Bowl. Rutgers at Michigan, 3 Central, 4 local, Big Ten Network, fighting for the 13 seed. What are you looking for? You're going to this one, correct?
Yes,
I
yes,
am
yes.
so sorry.
That's okay, because I truly see a Michigan victory here.
Okay, okay, look at that, instilling confidence back in the program.
Yes.
The line is set at 4.5. I think they might cover that. I think they
I think they
might.
might. I think a 7 point victory is in the cards
I
today.
was gonna say 8. I could also see they're winning by 20 with 8 minutes left, and then proceed to only win by 4, and and Rutgers gets a backdoor. That would be hilarious. Um,
Hey, but you know what? I'll take that
a win
because it's
is a
still a
win.
win. It's
Is a
still a
win.
win.
Okay, and then the only rematch of the week in the Big Ten, Maryland goes to Michigan State. Both teams 13-8 overall, 5-5 in Big Ten play. Got there in very different ways though. 4:30 p.m. Central, 5:30 local time on Fox. These teams played what 2 weeks ago with Michigan State pulling out a 2-point road win on CBS. Balanced scoring effort. Tyson Walker with 15, and then the three H's, Hogard, Hall, and Holloman, each with 12. And then on the other side, Jameer Young with 19, 4 and 4. Dante Scott with 16 in that game, and then Julian Reese with a 10-point double double. Jahari Long also had 9 in that game, and someone else had 5, and that was it. They only had 5 guys score. In that game, the difference was Maryland's turnovers. They turned it over 18 times to Michigan State's 8. But they also hustled Michigan State on the glass, 37-22, which is not, I mean, this Michigan State team is softer on the glass than probably any Michigan State team ever, at least in the Izzo era. But even still, 15 on the road, or 15 by Maryland, is a tough spot. Let's see, Michigan State's a 7.5 point favorite. I kind of like Maryland to keep it close. I don't know what you're thinking.
I think I
No?
disagree. I think Michigan State wins this game by double digits.
Maryland's playing their best ball, man. This is a
But
tough spot.
Michigan State at home is a different beast than Michigan State on the road.
Also true.
And they
Yeah.
already did it on the road and not that long ago. This wasn't an early January, this was a late January.
Yeah, that's true. But again, it was a close game that they kind of escaped with. The rebounding is what scares me because turnovers is more of a fluky stat at times in a one game sample. You getting hustled on the glass by 15, that stands out more to me, even though Maryland lost the game. I'm curious to see how that maybe Michigan State will come out with a new life on the glass. I'm excited to see, Hogard and Akins and Holloman, the defensive guys, how they defend Jameer Young in this game. Because 19-4-4 is about an average game probably for him at this point. I'm curious to see, can he go out on the road and take over? I think this might be a Tyson Walker game. Not that every game is not a Tyson Walker game, but in particular, I think this game he might go out and dominate. But I still think it's going to be close, and I would pick Maryland to cover. Okay, let's get into the two best games of the week on Sunday, starting at noon Central, 1 Eastern on CBS, in the spot that the Kansas City Chiefs normally play. Purdue at Wisconsin for the regular season Big Ten lead and probably title. We'll see. If
I
Purdue
like
wins, it's
Purdue
for the
here.
title.
Yes, I like Purdue here. Wisconsin has been playing poor. I'm not sure how they're going to guard Edey. Um, the guard play for Purdue all around is better. Wisconsin has better individual guards in AJ Store, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and I think Purdue is just clearly the better team. They just have faltered some this year in execution. Um, or they would have a bigger lead in this game, wouldn't really matter. So I like Purdue.
I don't. I think Purdue's going to win too. This is the type of game that Matt Painter wins, right? On the road against the next best team in the conference. Make a statement, Matt Painter. Do you have a line on this one? Because I do not.
If you give me a second, I can find it,
Okay.
but it'll be a second.
Um, I know that Purdue. I know that Purdue in the past has guarded. They've put Edey on Tyler Wall rather than Crowell because Wall has less. I mean, he has a face-up game, but he's not gonna light you up from deep. Crowell will shoot it, and so I think having Trey Kaufman-Renn in a centralized role, getting key rotational minutes is going to be massive for Purdue in this game in particular, because that's a guy that can guard Crowell in the post. And whenever you're running this two big lineup, especially against a Wisconsin team, that's huge. That if you can put Edey on Tyler Wall and limit him, who he's a better offensive player, and then you can stick Lance Jones on AJ Store, a first-team All-MVC defender multiple time. I like the matchups for Purdue. As long as it's not a Max Klesmit game or a Nasijan game or a Chucky game is possible, but I think I like the way Purdue matches up with Wisconsin better than the way Wisconsin matches up with Purdue. So I'll take Purdue as well. What's the line though?
I'm seeing Purdue by 6.
Oh, that's large. That's way larger than I thought it would be. I still like. No, I don't like. 6 is tough. I'll say Purdue. Purdue by 8. But it's not an 8-point game. Wisconsin's fouling, and Purdue extends the lead in the last minute. It's a 4-point game that ends up at 8. It's my final prediction. What do you got? You think Purdue covers 6?
I do. I like Purdue. I like Purdue a lot.
Yeah. All right, and then the final game of the weekend: Nebraska at Illinois. Nebraska 6-5 in conference. Illinois 7-3 in conference. Game is at 5:30 Central Local Time on Big Ten Network, 6:30 Eastern. First matchup between these two teams on the season. I wonder when is the last time that Purdue won in State Farm Center? Or not Purdue, Nebraska. What are you looking for? What's a matchup that you're curious about?
Um, I'm curious to see kind of what Illinois does against Mast because he's kind of a more traditional post guy who can't really guard Coleman on offense, but is going to back him down on defense. So I'm curious if they play Danger a little bit more this game against him.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think Mast is a better matchup for Coleman than a lot of these Big Ten centers have been. Because he will step out and shoot it. He's not a dominating low post guy. He's a finesse low post guy. He's got a nice bag, obviously, but he's not going to bully Coleman Hawkins because he's 200 pounds. Since they joined the Big Ten, Nebraska has only beat Illinois in Champaign once, and that was in the 2016 season. So 8 years since Nebraska's stepped into State Farm and won. Um, the ranked matchup is obviously interesting. I'm curious for Tominaga. Hopefully, we get the Tominaga that's emerged the last couple games where he hasn't been on. If he is a flamethrower, I don't know who's following him. Right? It's probably Shannon. Right? I guess Rogers maybe.
I was gonna
Just
say
with
I think they
physicality.
might put Rogers to guard him and not let Shannon get tired running in circles around him.
That's true, but yeah, we'll see. I think that matchup could vary depending on the game flow as well. If if he's torching us, then I think they'll make the switch to Shannon. It's all about what's more important, Shannon's offense or his defense. Um, I'm curious for that matchup. Um, Juwan Gary and Ty Rogers are roughly they're similar players. That'll be a fun. I don't know if they'll be guarding each other, but similar games. Uh, I'm excited to see Josiah Alec. He's become one of my favorite players in the Big Ten. I think he's a freshman. Um, he's become one of my favorite guys. Just a pure hustle guy. Type of guy I love to see. Um, and yeah, Bryce Williams. That's probably the Shannon matchup. Is Bryce Williams. What's the line on this one?
This is Illinois by 3.
3. I like Illinois to cover 3 at home against Nebraska. Yeah,
I don't know, that's tough. That's a tough one.
I don't know.
Um,
Purdue by 6 on the road is tough against the second best team. I think Illinois is. They're going to cover 3. They covered 3 against. Well, I guess they won by 3 against Michigan State.
but they didn't cover against so I don't know, man.
They're not gonna.
I want to take Nebraska badly.
I don't see it. I don't even think it's biased. I don't see how this Nebraska team does not match up well with Brad Underwood Illinois teams. 1 win. I lied. 2 wins. But they were both no wins since 2018.
I'm just
Illinois
saying,
won the
man,
last
don't
7.
be
It
surprised.
is a different Nebraska team. I will agree with that. This is not the same Nebraska team, and we got them just at the right time last year in Champaign at the end of January before they turned it around. Um, but yeah, I think it's a take care of business day. Stake your claim as we're a double bye team. It's a lock. I think it's just gonna be take care of business. That's what I see for Illinois in this game. And then when they go to Michigan State next week, that's whenever that's a game that means a lot. The 2 very important games, but no weekday games for Illinois next week. All right, and that's all of them. So yeah, I guess that's everything. Like I said at the beginning, give a like and a subscribe or a follow wherever you are watching us on. I guess you can watch us on Twitter as well. Twitter, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter for sure. Like we said, just over 100 followers now. But like you said, the journey is just beginning. Um, Check out the blog. Um, TikTok, I guess. I might post on TikTok. We'll see. I doubt it. You got anything for us before we wrap it up?
Um, we are now in February, and you know what comes after February is March. So time marches on. Name that song. Um, and March is quickly approaching. I can't wait.
Yeah, what, 6 weeks, 7 weeks maybe away from the start of the tournament? Probably 6 weeks, probably 5 weeks, I guess,
The start of the tournament, I think,
until
would be the play-in
it's the
games will be
22nd, I believe.
Tuesday and Wednesday, the 19th and 20th, right?
So
Or Wednesday, maybe. Only the play-in games play on Wednesday, right?
that's Tuesday, Wednesday.
It's Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay, so
Yep.
then the play-in games will be on the 19th starting, and the selection Sunday's on the 17th.
Okay. So yeah, that's 6 weeks from today, right? No, that doesn't add up. Roughly 6 weeks from today. Um,
No, it's 6 weeks and one day.
yep. And so conference tournaments, the Big Ten conference tournament, 5 weeks.
Yes.
All right, 5 weeks of regular season play is all we got left. Um, and then we get into my favorite week of the year, which is conference tournament week. I find that more entertaining. And then first and second round is obviously number two. And that's my opinion. I'm sure I'm in the minority with that argument. But that is I'm ecstatic for this Big Ten tournament because last year we got a lot of fluke results, right? Penn State makes their run all the way to the championship, which Penn State was good. But as a 10 seed, that's surprising. Ohio State winning at least 2 games, getting to the semis. So yeah, 3 games. This year, I don't expect that. The top half of this conference has elevated themselves from the rest, and I'm expecting to see the best teams playing on Saturday and Sunday, and so that's exciting for me. I'm expecting good ball. So yeah, it's swiftly approaching. So yeah, make sure you give us a follow because it's gonna be here in no time, and you want to be ready. So. All right, I think that is all. We will wrap this episode up, and we will see you guys around the same time next week. Thank you for listening.